Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the podcast where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and the founder of Tier 1 People, the executive search and recruitment firm that's dedicated to helping high-growth fintech companies hire exceptional people. Today's guest is Alan Costello, employee number 2 at Afterpay. In what is a little bit of a different format, because I'm usually talking to founders about their journey, I've welcomed Alan along to talk about his experience of working with what is undoubtedly the greatest fintech to come out of Australia. Alan, welcome to the show.
Dexter, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited for the chat.
I am as well. It's as I said, the first time we've done anything like this. I'm usually talking to founders, and so it's really great to be able to get your perspective, to share with our listeners, right? Because I think a lot of people in my network maybe haven't, if they have been in fintech, they haven't joined something as early stage as Afterpay was when you joined. And it's a very, very different story to join a 2-person business than a 2,000-person business. So I'm hoping that you can kind of shine some light on the experience for people so that they get a little bit more of an insight as to, when might be the right time for them to join a high growth company.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm coming up to my 10-year anniversary next month. So, and we're actually going to San Fran in the second week of September to join the wider block, kind of event where, there's going to be a massive amount of people. So it's kind of fitting in relation to where I started as like 2 people in a small office now to be part of this kind of global beast that is the block business. So yeah, look, very happy to share and give insights that hopefully may be useful for folk that are listening.
Yeah. And look, I think one of the reasons I was really keen to have you be the first person that we've kind of done this feature with is that, you're right. It's really rare. Almost, in fact, I don't know really of many people in my network who've been on the journey that you have. And, quite understandably for a lot of people, particularly kind of early employees, you get to a point where you go, okay, this isn't what I signed up for. It's not much fun anymore. It's like, it's become too bureaucratic, whatever it is. So yeah, look, I guess what would probably be really helpful is maybe as if you taught us just a little bit of your background before you joined Afterpay and kind of how you got to meet Nick and Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. So you might have guessed from the accent, I'm from the west of Ireland originally. Been in Australia almost 13 years. When I came over, I started, I guess my first major job was at eBay. So I worked in many sales roles back in Ireland before I came over. But I started working at eBay, obviously a great company, big tech company. And I worked for a guy named Fabio Di Cabralio, and I was part of his team at eBay for 2 years. We became very, very friendly, and he joined Afterpay as employee number 1. So when he kind of left, he gave me a call and said, mate, there's someone I need you to meet. I'm going to do something very, very different in relation to the size of the business. And that's when I met Nick for the first time. So said, listen, I'm keen to I'll have a chat with anyone. I work in sales. So met with Nick in a small coffee shop in Surrey Hills. And, I think Nick at the time was probably 24 or 25, and sat down with him, didn't know anything about him, knew very little about what he was looking to do. But automatically I was just like blown away by him as an individual. The way he talked, the passion he had for what he was looking to assemble. And I kind of walked away from that conversation going, wow, like I'm not even fully sure what it is or the back end of it or the fundamentals of it, but that is a guy that I would love to work with. And obviously having worked with Fabio previously, like the 2 of them combined, I was like, listen, I'll take a punt at it. And, 10 years later, here we are.
So when was this? 2015, 2014?
Yeah, so it was about this time, 2015. So yeah, like I said, met with Nick and then had had a couple of conversations with my now wife who had come over to Australia with me about, taking a plunge of going into a business that was pretty much, not even a business at that time. And yeah, just kind of said, why not? Why not have a go and try something new and something, kind of a little bit different and a bit more challenging. So yeah, that was like, yeah, almost 10 years to the day. And, walking into that office on day one, it probably was a bit of a stark reality of what I had gone from the corporate world of eBay, where, we had food laid out every day, and we had, fridges stocked with beers and juices and everything. And then, yeah, walked in, brought my own laptop, had to tether off a phone for Wi-Fi. So I know that sounds like, it sounds crazy, but that was the
No,
reality.
no, it sounds like exactly what day one is when you're in a startup, right? And I think that's the reality for folks is, they kind of come in and it's like, where's my EA and where's this and where's that? And it's like, it's not right. It's
No, it
yeah,
was very much the bare minimums.
and I think the kind of the hardest thing is, and I had this when I started my business as well, was you open up the laptop and you go, okay, like what now? Like, what
Yeah,
do I do? Like, what's what do I actually have to do next to kind of? It's all well and good, yeah, we're a business, but it's like, what do I do? Like, yeah, and you
yeah,
kind of pick up the
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
I think Nick, obviously, the it became very, apparent really quickly for me that, we we needed to get to 100 merchants to, we were going to have to raise money, which again was something I didn't know when I signed up for the job, because with the way our business works, we pay, the money up front, and then we get it back over a 6 to 8 week period for the consumer. So we needed cash, and the kind of the chicken and the egg, the bigger we got, the more cash we needed. So it was
yeah,
kind of, but we wanted to grow really quickly. But that meant we needed to get an influx of cash really quickly as well to keep the business running. So I think that was kind of like, I knew then very much what the purpose was. Like, I think we had 7 retailers when I joined, and there was a lot of pressure to get to that 100 to put into a
yeah,
booklet to get in front of investors. So it was pretty much like, let's go here from day one.
yeah. 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 I mean, Fabio's got a reputation in the market, which is very, very, well deserved. But he's kind of relentless from from what I hear. How did you kind of harness that energy? Without the structure and all of those things in place, and the kind of CRM and the tools and all of the things that you get when you're working at a large enterprise. How did you kind of harness that energy so that you were actually kind of I guess being like efficient with it and not getting burnt out and you're kind of
Yeah.
chasing your tails the whole time.
Yeah, and like that was kind of a bit of a challenge at the start, right? Because we didn't have any processes, CRM. We were kind of just talking to as many people as we could, like using our contacts from eBay and the industry.
Yeah,
And I think, it was very much like, sometimes we just had to put the handbrake on and go, like, we need to make sure that we're actually capturing some of this information, feedback we're getting. But at the same time, we had to keep driving to get to
yeah,
that number. So I think it was a bit of a balancing act, but there is no doubt, like, the expectations from Nick as well were, we need to go as hard as possible, as quick as possible. And
yeah,
like, the product was, there, right? We were transactional on some websites, but I guess, our it's a little bit different approach. We wanted to go with the biggest guys in town first, and then kind of work our way down to dominate the small business part of retail. And that is challenging, because nobody wants
mm,
to be the first one to take the punt. Everyone is
yeah,
like, they'll get the fear of missing out when their direct competitor may have taken up
yeah,
something
yeah,
new, but trying to get someone to be that kind of, marquee. And that's where I will always say, like, relationships played a massive part. You had the likes of Paul Greenberg, who was involved too, who,
yeah,
like, he's Mr. E-commerce, Mr. Retail, and he helped us, as well as Nick and Ant's relationships, open up so many doors to have conversations. Not saying people were
yeah,
jumping up to sign up, but we
yeah,
definitely leverage relationships to be able to, get the proposition in front of the right people,
yeah.
which isn't always that easy in business.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We had another guest on a few months back, and they're going after the banking segment. And a bank CEO turned around to him and said, "Hey, look, I'm in a race to be your sixth customer because I want to see how the first five goes." Right, and I think it kind of beautifully summarizes, the challenge that you've got in Australia, right? Like, kind of nobody wants to be first. Everybody wants
Yeah.
to see like a couple of their competitors going, and it's like, yeah, we'll be fast, fast adopters, right? Fast followers, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think the Afterpay business and for myself and Fabio and Nick and the people that were involved at the time, like those folk that took the punt on us early doors, like we owe them so much in relation to where the business has got to, because you know yourself, there's a lot of companies out there, businesses that have great ideas and great products, but they just don't get, like, timing is everything, right? It's the market was in a good place, people were interested, e-commerce was starting to really boom, and payments was, is, and always will be really, really important part of business. So a lot of stuff was timing, but also some people in the early days took a punt on us, and
Yeah,
they didn't know like what it was going to deliver. They probably were like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we kind of switch it off again. But not everyone was willing to take that chance at the
yeah.
time.
At what point were you in the business and into your role with the company, Alan, that you thought, hey, I might have made the right choice here?
Yeah, it's interesting because I probably thought a good few times before I thought that I think I made the wrong choice here,
Yeah.
right? So because I think like what I mean by that was, right, I was working with great people, right, and I couldn't not have a massive belief in the product based on like Nick and his enthusiasm of the product, and like getting to go to
It's
meetings
a
with
bit
him.
like watching a horse race, right? Like if you've backed the winner, you don't know you've backed the winner until the end, right?
Yeah,
And if you went
exactly.
back, right, and if you think of all the emotions that you've got, where it's not out in front, it's kind of behind. You thinking, "Oh God, what have I done? Look at this
Yeah.
dud." Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you might like, if you put it into that sort of terminology, like the, I guess the horse that I was on before was the eBay horse, was like a
Yeah,
pretty solid chance, right?
yeah. It's like
It
that.
was a well
Kind of.
established.
Yeah, you went on the 100 to 1. Yeah, you backed the 100 to 1. Like, oh,
Exactly. Yeah. And he's
no,
got a
yeah,
chance, it's probably not as good a chance as the favorite. So I think it probably was, I'm going to say like 6 months in, right? I think all the conversations that we were having with retailers, like a lot of it was education, right? When we went out to
mm,
market first, they're like, you're same as a credit card. And like, this to this day, we're still educating policy creators, and, we're still
yeah,
talking to government and politicians and really just educating them on how we're the total opposite to some of these, um, really interest bearing products. I think there was probably a period where we got to that 100, right? And, the listing of the company was very important. But I think when our kind of strategy was very simple. We kind of went like, let's get a player in apparel, let's get a player in the footwear industry. And then, like you said, the domino effect started to happen. Like you integrated with a few of those, and next thing, you
yeah,
just gave a call back to their competitor and said, hey, I know you said it wasn't the right time. Just FYI, X has
yeah,
gone live with Afterpay. And it's like, when can you come? When can you come to
yeah,
Melbourne to meet? So I think when the kind of the conversation started turning from thanks for the chat
yeah,
to how does this technically get integrated to my website and how long will it take, then you're like,
yeah,
okay, this is starting to kind of snowball in some aspects. So yeah, I think it was probably like 6 months in, but there was challenges before that in relation
yeah,
to expectations. You kind of don't know at the time when you go into a business, but your founders have a lot on the line, right? Especially if
yeah,
they've taken in, equity from partners and stuff like that. Like, you probably the pressure they're under, which obviously ladders down to the people on the front line. But I think there was tough times in that period, but it was always for the right reasons. It was like,
yeah,
we need to keep going because we've got a real chance of doing something really, really, big here.
yeah,
Um, Even at the time, like, what did that look like? I think I remember Nick saying when I met with him in that coffee shop, was like, I reckon, we can turn this into $1 million business, like, and we can get a couple of 100,000 customers and stuff like this. And I was like, this guy's, he talking a big game here, but like
yeah,
very soon it started to go, right, well, this can go a lot further, which was
yeah.
incredible to be a part of and to witness.
Yeah, it's one of the things I get asked quite a lot is, people kind of ask my opinion of, who I think the most successful fintechs have been, right? And for me, there's always two that I pick, and it's Afterpay and Revolut. And the similarities between how they've, kind of gone about growth are kind of quite, they're there for anybody who wants to just take a look. And if I look at, kind of Revolut, their proposition was simple. If you're a millennial and you like going traveling and you're sick of getting stung on fees every time you spend your money, download this app, get this card. I think what was kind of, and then the other thing that they did was just kind of really hook into, well, who's our cohort? And that, one of my mates, he was the first head of growth at Revolut. And he said that, look, it wasn't travelers that we first targeted. It was actually flight attendants and pilots. And I look at kind of Afterpay, and theirs was, kind of similar in that, hey, if you're a millennial and you want to look like this tonight and you don't have a credit card, download Afterpay. But then on the flip side, which is where you come into it, you go to merchants and go, hey, your sales are going like that. Do you want to see them go like that, right? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
and
And I think
and that kind
it
of
was,
flywheel that you got from that, of this kind of, both going off
yeah,
at the same time, was like, you just
absolutely.
went,
And it resonated so well. I think it's like the, as you said, the flywheel, right? The consumer was our biggest driver of engagement with merchants, right? Early on, people started like setting up the We Love Afterpay Facebook page, right? So I'm trying to talk to JB Hi-Fi or the Iconic, and they're interested. But then when their customers are actually going to their customer service, going, "When are you getting Afterpay?" Like it's really, really powerful, and our consumers have and always will be like the most important part, the merchants as well. But they work so well together, and I think the simplicity of the product was again what I see as the reason for success. It was very much like it didn't try to be all of everything. It was one product with one fundamental offering to the consumer, and it also made it very easy for the retailer. Like we're going to pay you up front, your consumers are going to pay over time, and it's not complicated, it's not complex, and as I said, it resonated very well with both the merchant and the consumer.
yeah. So as the business started to really take off, you then go on and you're hiring a lot more people, and you're kind of moving through the gears of business growth. And it's like, we've got, data and research, and as well as, just, I guess, everybody that we talk to generally says the same thing, that you get to 50 to 70 people and the growing pains start. And you kind of can't remember everybody's name. And then you've got like 10, 20 new starters every Monday. And it's like, it's kind of, it gets a bit manic. What
Yeah.
was the point for you that you were like, gosh, this is totally changed now. Like, this is becoming a very different business.
Yeah, I think like, oh man, it's been like there's been so many, right? Like if you
Yeah.
think we started in a tiny office, right? And then it's like, right, we're going to need more space because we're bringing on more people. But then you're still a very tight knit group. I think we've been incredibly fortunate over the decade that I've been involved, of the leaders we've had across the business. So you've got Kat now, you had Rachel Kelly before that, you had David Hancock before that, and Nick and Ant. So we've always had incredible leaders that continue to have people at the forefront of everything that we do. And I don't say that lightly because, that is a bit cliched, but we really have managed to maintain that since the foundation of the business, that people are really, really important. So I think as we've grown, like people wise and business wise, we've done a great job of keeping a really, really strong culture where everyone has a voice and everyone has a purpose. As we moved offices, we obviously grew people, lots and lots of people. We split between Melbourne and Sydney, I would say. I think obviously when we got acquired by Block, which is probably 3.5 years ago, that's probably when you saw the most significant change, right? We still
Yeah.
had we become a part of a global business, and, they obviously have Square in this region as well. They don't have Cash App, but they have Square.
Yeah.
So that was probably, I would say, like the biggest shock in relation to going from, we'd gone from zero to maybe 1,500 between the US, UK with just Afterpay. But then, you enter into a world where you're one of 12,000 employees. That is a big, big change. And systems start to integrate, and, you get lots of things that you didn't have before, like,
Yeah.
benefits and all that sort of stuff that just was, I guess, really eye-opening in relation to like day one at Afterpay to
Yeah.
here we are today. So that was probably the biggest. But throughout the journey, there was several milestones. Like when COVID hit, like that was a crazy couple of months in our business, because I don't know if you
Yeah.
recall, but the
Yeah, my
market
share
thought that
price went to
like
what, $7?
it went to set like it absolutely, like people were like, what's happening here? Are the doors going to close? We were in
Yeah.
such a healthy position as a business,
Yeah.
and but the world just didn't know what was happening. So then 2 months later, like e-commerce has gone bananas, which is
Yeah.
was our biggest stronghold at the time, and now we've got a good split between bricks and mortar. But we just then start going on this elevation where we actually need more and more people to get, being able to cater for the demand that was being created across
Yeah.
sales and marketing. So that was a really like doomsday. And then all of a sudden, bang, it's like, this is
Yeah.
incredible for our business. So strange times, but again,
So,
from a
so you
business
went at
perspective.
was it the end of 2020? You went from your share price being $7 to then being in the top 20 ASX list, or was it the end of 2021 where you kind of broke
Yeah, I
into
think
the
it was
top 20
around the end
ASX
of
listed?
2021 where,
Yeah.
yeah, like, it was honestly, people were asking like, what does this mean? Like,
Yeah.
if the share price goes down any further, it means that we don't have a business. Um, to then just going on this crest or wave where our numbers just started to
Yeah.
absolutely, snowball in the right direction. So again, probably stuff that would never happen again if you're around for the next 500 years. But yeah, an incredible journey to be on around that time as well.
Yeah. What was that like then when you're kind of seeing, I mean, it must have been because the listing itself wasn't like a big fanfare event. It was like, backdoor kind of listing, which was really the only way that you could do it right back then. Nobody was interested in fintech. VC wasn't interested in you. I mean, every major VC in Australia turned both you and Zip down, much to their regret later on. What was that feeling like to see you to see Afterpay in the top 20 of the ASX listed firms, and you'd been there from the beginning with a conversation with Nick, which is like, it's almost like the kind of Facebook social network where he's like, yeah, you want to make $1 million. And you're like, hey, what's cool is $1 billion, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And I often think about this and talk to people about it. It's like you kind of, you're so absorbed in it that like a lot of the time you don't sit back and actually think about what you're achieving. And I think we've always and continue to have the like, what's next? Like we're continuously achieving, but you're always looking for the next thing. So I'd probably say at the time didn't look at it like with that sort of a lens. But when Anton, Nick, and the Afterpay, business and shareholders decided to sell to Block, I remember like having I don't know, was it email or text message engagement with Anton, Nick, just going like, holy crap, like this is insane. Like what have you guys and been able to achieve, and thankfully have had me on the journey with you guys. I think that was definitely a pinch me moment, that like
Mm,
this Australian business found in a small room with a couple of staff had been acquired by, a global
yeah.
beast in the block. And I think that was probably the one time where you kind of just go like, you just kind of exhale and go,
Yeah.
that is pretty special. Um, like, again, it's great to have conversations like this because you actually do kind of think about it a little bit more to go, wow, like some of the stuff we did, you could
Yeah.
join 100 startups, 1,000 startups, and they never kind of get to the heights that we've been
Yeah.
managed to get to over the time.
I want to have a chat with you as well about, I guess, two things that I guess would relate to you kind of personally, just around, your motivation. So, look, the first one is I want to talk about, the regulatory stuff, the kind of sniping, the, lobbying, the PR, the media on your case. Personally, I got out of credit card debt by being able to use buy now, pay later. There's, stories of people in my network who were single parents who managed to not only get rid of their credit cards through buy now, pay later, but didn't even have to use buy now, pay later once they'd kind of done that because they weren't paying interest anymore, right? And these stories kind of never got out, right? And what I want to kind of understand from you is like, how hard was that to see that, hey, we're doing this cool thing, we're innovating, we're actually creating a product that people love, that's creating jobs, that's like, is creating value, and yet every time we try to do something, we're having
You
the
get it.
rug pulled from under us.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I think, we talked a bit about soccer beforehand. I think it's like we were the team that we pulled together. We kind of, as much and all as you see us, you kind of keep outside that outside noise. We know what Ant and Nick built the company on, the foundations of what they wanted to achieve with it. And we could see every day internally what, value we were adding to our consumers and to our merchants, which are both of our consumers. So I think, it was challenging because from day one, there was a misunderstanding about what buy now, pay later was. And I think the media and certain organizations just jumped on it and, kind of had a vendetta against,
Yeah,
the industry as whole, maybe not just Afterpay. And again, I think it was kind of just education piece
yeah,
where they didn't understand it. Like the story you shared there, we hear that from our consumers, right? Like we meet with them and talk to them about, I have small kids, Christmas time, I could break this up over paychecks. Like that's the stuff that's like, that's why you're doing your job. And there's always going to be outside noise. And that's like, it's kind of like, at the end of the day, what the founders were able to create was like, we are a payment option, right? And sometimes it's kind of hard to comprehend that because we're a brand, right? And they've just done such an incredible job in like turning this into something way bigger than just a button that's on a website
mm,
or a card you can tap
yeah.
when you go in store. So I think there's always been noise from day one, right? And I think like we're a regulated product now, which Ant and Nick had always been forthcoming about. They'd always been involved with the regulators.
Yeah. So the other part of the motivation piece I want to really kind of explore with you is, whether you've worked in a startup, you've had your own business, whatever it is, it's almost like a drug. The kind of highs and lows. Champagne and razor blades. I like to call it, right. Like it's and kind of it's you do get burnt out, and sometimes you kind of question and say like, why am I doing this? But then you have a period of stability, and it's almost like you're kind of being called back to kind of go back to that chaos again. How have you managed to kind of keep steady over this 10 years where you haven't kind of hit that point and gone, you know what, now we're a big global business. This isn't like, I'm not getting the buzz from, thinking we're going to be out of business in the next like 90 days. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. 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 In the Silicon Valley, kind of famously, we hear about the PayPal mafia, the ex-PayPal employees who've gone on. In terms of, I guess, kind of a potential Afterpay mafia and what's next for you, like what? Because people would have these assumptions that you'd be off early retired or starting your own business now. Like for you, like can you put some kind of realities around what it actually means to have a successful exit and kind of what it does to you as a person? Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. 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 All right. Last question that I've got for you, Alan, is if you were given your younger self advice after that first conversation that you had with Nick, what would the advice be that you'd be given to you? Your kind of pre Afterpay. Yeah. You can go back in a time machine. What are you going to say to Alan back then? Mm, brilliant. Mate, it's been fantastic to chat with you. It's just been really fascinating hearing the journey. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. Brilliant. Thanks, mate. As always, folks, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. As Alan said, we've got some great content on there. If you're not following the show, make sure you give us either a like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or follow us on your favorite podcast player. And please consider leaving a review. It really helps me kind of amplify the show and get great guests like Alan onto the show. Until the next episode, keep well.